Welcome back into Group C. We have a couple of new players lined up. We have a couple of new people on the couch. I'll get to them in a couple of moments' time. We're once again live from Burbank in California as people cross the road, because that's what you do in downtown Burbank.
Oh my God, Sean!
Hey guys,
actually, most people are driving.
Well, I mean, we don't have cars, so maybe after the cast, you guys want to go out and cross the road with me? It'll be a sick time
to get from one side to the
Maybe
other.
we'll make it to the shot for BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm always happy to have you on the couch because anything I say,
I'll be there to criticize.
You do criticize me. All right, time to focus on the match at hand, though. Group C decider match, the unlikely decider match, due to what we saw from Showtime, advancing through in first place. We have ByuN, tournament favorite, going up against Deer, a player that you've over there said it's going to do very well. Said it's going to do very well in this tournament. You said that.
Well,
Deer
actually,
what did I say?
Didn't you say Patience?
No, I said
You said Patience top 4 as well.
Patience top 4, but you said
That was my outside call.
But you also
Thank
said,
you for continuing to keep me up on that.
I'll do my
Patience,
best.
Like you said, Petit Drogo would win.
You believe in miracles, but do
No,
you
I
believe
didn't.
Patience has been eliminated.
Yeah.
Deer, not yet.
No.
Do you think
I think
that he'll continue to do well or be eliminated?
Well, he hasn't really done that well yet, to be honest. Him against ByuN, it's hard to say because ByuN got so trashed and smashed, and by Showtime, it was like kind of crazy that we weren't really ready for that.
But now he faces another Crane, a weaker opponent. So
yeah, well, it's true. It's true. Like you say that like in your in control voice, but. It's true. Like Showtime seems to be better than Deer right now.
There's actually a super interesting dynamic going into these games, like strategically, because we saw Showtime play a similar style in both games against ByuN, where he was playing Colossus, Disruptor into Storm, and just did super well with it. So now does Deer do the same, or did he even already have a plan going into this tournament against ByuN? And does he stick to that? That's going to be one of the big questions that we answer here.
I was talking to I think it was Smix this morning, and she was saying that she spoke to Deer about this, and he thinks he can just take a lot of what he learned from Showtime's play there and adapt that and take out ByuN because of that, whereas ByuN maybe won't be able to switch up his style so much. And I would say that, to make it very clear what that style was, Showtime got a lot of splash damage, like very quickly in the game, but he stayed at 3 Colossus or less basically the whole time. Yeah. And that's the key part, because Korean Protosses like to go up to 5 or 6 Colossus very often, and that's where the Mass Viking that ByuN went for is very good.
I think one of the biggest problems that Deer is facing at the moment, I don't think he ever expected to be playing against a Terran player for his tournament live.
Yeah.
I think he probably expected him to play maybe in the winners match, but then he would have fallen back on a Violet or a Showtime because everyone's expecting ByuN just to ace this group. Now he's facing up against ByuN in the decider match. I think that's probably where a lot of his problems are going to lie, right?
It's brutal. This could be the finals to any really good tournament. And yeah, I can't remember who said it yesterday, but someone said they actually asked Deer, and Deer was like, what? I did not expect to have to do this right now at all. But you know what? He has the tools. He does. And I like the point you guys brought up. He did get to watch a PVT yesterday. It was fairly one-sided, and obviously we're kind of making jokes about Colossus, but it's also kind of real. Like, readjusting what you believe to be true on the fly at the tournament when these guys have put in like 700 games of practice before, and that's not counting everything else they've done, of course, but specifically for BlizzCon, it's very hard to adjust on the fly like that. And it gets to be a bit of a poker game too, because it's like, okay, I'll add 3 Colossus, but what if someone went to ByuN and was like, yo, man, just keep making Liberators, don't make Vikings. And like, all right. And then it just falls on its face. You only have a best of 3 to experiment with.
Well, ByuN on the other side, I don't think he would have liked to have he's kind of lost that god tier appearance that everyone looked at him coming into this tournament, because everyone's like, oh, okay, he's going to wreck. Everyone's expecting the best of the best, but then he comes in and loses versus Showtime. That's a weakness for him now, because other people believe they can also do the same.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too, Sean, is he was propped up. Like, we're seeing the highlights of him versus Violet. This was the most one-sided, like, well, no, okay, a laser actually makes a bid here too, but this is one of the worst matches we saw at this BlizzCon so far, and that was expected. But then he goes up and gets swatted by Showtime, and that's where there's an amazing gut check moment that, and you can see it, like, I don't think we're going to have a shot of this, but when he lost to Showtime, I was looking at him after the camera angle, and he looked frazzled. He was like, what just happened? I did not expect any of that.
I fully expect ByuN to have reacted properly, though, to that loss, to have studied those games. I heard he was already practicing backstage against Showtime behind this and already doing a lot better. So I'm sure he's looked at that and said, look, I just wasn't ready for this style. I also made some mistakes here and there. And the next time I'm going to be ready against it, I have another Protoss to face as well tomorrow. And I think it's really cool as well. You know, these players, they play each other in the tournament, but then as soon as they know they won't play each other again for a while, they're like, let's play together.
I know, Todd. I was going to say, it is a funny dynamic back there. Like, everyone's actually working with everyone. Or they do ladder practice, and they're all on NA right now, and they're hitting each other as well.
Yeah,
We've heard those stories. So if you're a high-level NA player, this is actually the best time to be laddering.
So what are our thoughts on how this is going to go then? Is ByuN back on top?
I think that it's not that hard for him to adjust what happened against Showtime. I think that he kind of he practices so much, right? He's playing 12, 15 hours a day leading up to BlizzCon, doing the same thing over and over against the same opponents over and over on the Korean ladder. And if he can just turn off the Viking button and, you know, just like go into more Liberators, like if he had done that against Showtime, game number 1 is probably his. And game number 2 is a little bit different, but like that's the type of style we need to see, the type of switch. And the fact that he was sitting there playing with Showtime, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already figured that out. So I still think it's going to be a hard one for Deer.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, of the players that I would count as someone that could adjust on the fly, ByuN is at the top of that list. I just was one of those people that live on cam, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be speaking as like an expert to everyone. I'm like, man, Showtime, support a father when your son's getting his butt kicked, and then his son just destroys him. I'm like, wow. There's more StarCraft to be played. I'm sure I'll know something. You know, it just did not look good. So all of a sudden I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, ByuN should spank Deer, but I don't know. And these guys have played. I think there is going to be more familiarity, which is going to be an interesting element here. Deer is a deep Korean Protoss player. He does not go to all the IEMs, doesn't go to all the DreamHacks. He's in Korea playing. They faced off in a tournament fairly recently, even.
GSL top 4.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a return to normalcy. For me, the interesting storyline of this is that one of these two guys out in groups, and that's just so crazy. Joining Solar, for me, as some of the biggest upsets not advancing.
Keep in mind, it's not like Showtime just like absolutely like crushed ByuN from the start. I really feel, particularly in map number 1, Frozen Temple, like the way ByuN attacked on the top right and the Liberator setup, like he took out some of the very important bases of Showtime. He was in a really good spot. Like Showtime, again, he did one of the only things that could beat ByuN, which was go in the middle of his production and have him kind of mess around with the unit's movement. So I do think he's going to manage these situations better today, and I think ByuN's going to win against Deer.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, first place of Group C went to the German player Showtime. Who's going to take second place? Let's jump into the game.
The 2016 World Championship Series Global Finals is brought to you by Intel, T-Mobile, NVIDIA, and Republic of Gamers.
All right, it is time for another ByuN match against Deer. A Terran versus Protoss. Will Deer have made any adjustments based off of what Showtime used to beat him? Or will we just have an old school Korean TvP, Roddy?
Yeah, and of course, since the semi-final that these two went up against each other, Nate, that was one of my favorite games to watch this year when I was just sitting at home, you know, feet at the desk, watching some GSL, and I was like, oh my god, ByuN is ridiculously good. This is some of the best Terran I've ever seen in my life. We're going to see it again. It's going to be happening on Frost first, which is really cool, because one of my favorite games of all time was Deer against Maru once upon a time on this map as well. So Nate, it doesn't really get much better than this.
Should be an explosive series as we round out the final day before we go to BlizzCon. In the northeast position of Frost, the red Terran player, the Terror from Korea, he's ByuN! And his opponent in the southwest, the blue Protoss player fighting for his life, he's Deer!
I feel like we haven't spoken that much yet about Deer this tournament, which is crazy, because once upon a time in 2013, I really think it's safe to say that Deer was the best player in the world. He did not only win a GSL, he also won the seasonal WCS championships right after that, and he came into BlizzCon 2013 as one of the favorites to win it all. Back then he got upset by Jaedong in that crazy series with that borrowed Ling Roach play. I think everybody will remember that if you were watching it, but he's still so incredibly good. He's such a phenomenal Protoss player that I'm so excited for these games, and I really hope it will just deliver, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things that the guys also mentioned on the desk is we talk about the Korean style, the familiarity between these players. One of the reasons why we talked so much about the Vikings being an issue against a player like Showtime is it's not that people never build Colossi anymore. We do see them occasionally, but it's usually pretty heavy aggression. And I think that that's one of those things that's kind of been interesting is the way that he played around that and also mixed in the Disruptors and Storm, which all the other Protoss analysts were saying is very hard to control with that army. But so far, cross spawns, you have the largest distance between the two players, and unsurprisingly, out of ByuN, he's going to open up with a pretty straight 2 barracks build after this fast command center.
You think that's unsurprising? You think CC first on Frost on the low ground is that what you expected?
This is something that I've seen ByuN do a pretty reasonable bit of. The gas timing for the first one is interesting. A lot of Terran players will go straight for that very fast 3rd barracks and then go for 2 gas geysers at once. So maybe he wants to just have this reactor very quickly, which he's going for, and just wants to get his tech lab up so he can have enough production to deal with maybe early Oracle harass or early Adept harass without needing the 3rd barracks that fast.
This is actually quite nice, getting that first probe very early on. Let me take a look to see if the probe did see that the command center was finishing up, which is very important because that should give Deer the information that this was indeed a command center first. He doesn't have to worry about the Reaper already being on the other side of the map, as that probe did its best to make sure that it caught a glimpse of that CC, and it did, so its sacrifice was not in vain, Nate.
Nope, and that as that Adept goes across the map, Stim is going to start up, the second gas is being taken, and we have a robotics facility and a Twilight Council on the way. Now, builds like this with this fast command center and then the barracks usually end up having biggest vulnerability to builds like Dark Templar because your orbital energy is really synced up. If you drop 2 mules, you have nothing else on the way. So outside of that, it really just comes down to what level of build Deer wants to bring. Because if I look at ByuN, I know he's going to play this very straightforward. He'll go up to factory. He won't do anything super crazy. He wants to safely get up to his starport type, get his medevacs out, and, you know, get the ball rolling on harass.
Yeah, Deer can do many things. It could just be a safe defensive blink opening, which I think is the most, I would say, straight up way for Protoss to play on this map. But it could also still be a Dark Shrine, because that robotics facility is quite quick. But it's going to be Blink for now. Now, Blink is great for so many reasons. Obviously, it's great in dealing with medevacs, great in taking out Liberators. And also, you can move out a little bit. If you worry about the bio push just over the ground early on, it's very nice to have your Blink Stalkers on the other side of the map and just slowly but steady, you know, start chipping away at that army, shave off a couple of units, and that makes it a lot easier to actually clean up the final wave of Terran units once they are arrived on your side of the map.
Yeah, and as we can see, ByuN spreading out his units in between his main and his natural, 6 Marines to stop an Oracle if he gets poked by anything, and also keeping the units near the ramp in case Adepts try to shade through past the wall. He can close the door at those supply depots and try to block those as well. So Deer going for a 3rd Nexus. This is a reasonably standard, I'd say, timing.
I'd say it's fast. I mean, obviously it's very reasonable to say the least, but I think it's even fast, especially when you open up with Blink. It's going to be one very crucial moment where ByuN is going to have a lot of units because of his CC first. This is a very common scenario in TvP. He's going to run across the map. A good scan there immediately picks up that observer, so Deer will not know how many units he truly has to worry about. That Warp Prism is interesting. Obviously, it's great to do some counter pressure and like distract ByuN and buy time, but this also means that Deer is going to have even less units to defend at first. Blink Stalkers are great, but like I said, it's very important then he starts fighting on the other side of the map, because if Deer is just going to sit back and wait until ByuN's forces arrive, I actually think he will just be outnumbered and there is nothing he can do anymore.
Well, it'll turn into like a Stim A move scenario for him, since it's just Stalkers, and Marines and Marauders will rip those to pieces. So that Warp Prism definitely going to have a key role in trying to keep ByuN on his side of the map while Deer gets this 3rd base up and running and also gets his forges on the way as ByuN's +1 is finishing too.
Now, ideal scenario for Deer is that he gets in a good position to do some damage on the medevacs. If you can pick off the medevacs, it makes it a lot easier. This is super Marine heavy, by the way, not a single Marauder. ByuN could stim forward, but he doesn't want to do that just yet. But you know, this is exactly what I meant before. Scan will go down, picks up the observer, makes it a little bit harder for the Stalkers to do what they were doing. But Deer is so far doing everything right. He is playing with Blink Stalkers the way he wants to be playing. Missile turrets.
Oh, this is so interesting. So we do have this Warp Prism coming in on the east side, 2 medevacs going southeast, and then still quite a lot of Marines up front. So maybe he just wants to hold the front with these. He's going to push them out right before the next 2 medevacs come out. So maybe try to hit this drop and attack at the front at the same time.
Deer did not see this drop, by the way, that's on the bottom side of the map. The observer was close, but it did not catch a glimpse of it. Taking a look at the main base of Deer, he is spreading out pylons, but he doesn't really have anything in position just yet. If 16 Marines show up in his main base, he's not ready for that, and he could end up losing a lot of workers. But ByuN is actually going to unload outside.
He just wants to fight with one big army. The Widowmine is going to go up front. The Adepts immediately picking it up. The Marines just stim straight forward, grab the Sentry with the Guardian Shield, pick off the other Sentry, so no force fields extra to be added onto this. He's just going to go straight for it. The Immortal backing up towards the ramp, but this Marine ball is ripping everything to pieces. pieces.
No.
This is not enough from Deer to stop ByuN.
No photon overcharge, no force fields, or at least the force fields are not good enough. Mothership Core will show up now, but it's a little bit too late. This could very well just be game, as there's just no answer to all of these Marines. So many probes will fall, and Deer is in so much trouble.
ByuN goes to the fast command center and uses that money to get an insane number of Marines to push straight into the heart of Deer's home. And this Immortal, trying to help fight at the natural, will also die. Stalkers versus Marines already that fight rarely pans out well for Protoss.
I mean, Resonating Glaives is done, so for now he will push these Terran units back, but needless to say, the reinforcements are on their way, and Deer knows that from this point on, it's going to be incredibly difficult to defend 3 locations at once, especially after losing the Mothership Core.
Yeah, these Marines and Marauders are ready to push in once again. It's just Stalkers and Adepts, as you pointed out. We do have a very low number of Marauders, though, as you mentioned earlier. So a lot of Marines, definitely vulnerable against the Adepts as that count continues to increase. But I do love that he's continuing to add Widow Mines into this composition as well, since these are extremely powerful versus those light units that clump up.
I mean, 65 army supply, it's going to be very hard to deal with these mines as well. Stim forward, again, a couple of stocks getting picked off immediately. The Adepts are just melting away.
I love this. He has the Marauders up front. A lot of the Adepts are shooting the Marauders, and they're able to eat so much of that damage as the army is destroyed and GG is called.
Wow, rough game for Deer there. I really felt like his setup was alright. I felt like he had a good idea of being aggressive with the Blink Stalkers, but then he just fell back. I guess he knew that there were 2 medevacs somewhere out on the map. He didn't know exactly where they were. He wanted to make sure he wasn't being sandwiched or something. He went back, he was just sitting there, and that is that one crucial moment where you really need just 1 or 2 more warpins as a Protoss, or you need a photon overcharge, or you need perfect force fields. He had none of those things. That Terran army in that phase in the game just has a little too much DPS for Protoss to deal with if you don't have any of those things.
And big kudos to ByuN for getting the snipe on the sentries as well. The ones that had energy, the only sentry left at the end of that fight had popped 2 force fields, but without any extra, you can't push that army away from your key units like your Immortals. And I also think it was a very cool choice that ByuN, he snuck those 2 medevacs around, but he decided he didn't want to go for the main base. He recognized that there would probably be photon overcharge, but there also didn't seem to be that position to set up and use the overcharge to defend where the army was. And just having that killer instinct to realize, yeah, I could just kill this whole entire army right now.
What I was most surprised by Deer is that he was just kind of standing there. I felt like he could have identified that that army was too powerful to deal with, but he was just standing there, he was trading, looking at how the battle was going, and then, you know, halfway through he's like, oh, I've lost all the sentries, you know, I can't really blink anymore. And now the Immortals are starting to fall as well, and obviously it was best case scenario for ByuN. Very quick, clean, and easy, I would almost say. Game number 1 for ByuN.
All right, well, let's get into game number 2 as we already have some shenanigans on the way from this man in the southeast, the Red Terran. He's ByuN.
1 map away from making it to the quarterfinals.
And he is up ByuN and 0 against this guy in the top left, the blue Protoss, Deer.
Frozen Temple, one of these maps where 1 and 2 base pushes were incredibly popular for some time. Obviously, this is something that Deer is already thinking of, but is he thinking about this, Nate? Is he thinking about a super early, well, what is most likely to be a Reaper? Anything else would be incredibly crazy.
Yeah, we have the gas coming in, we have the barracks coming in. Deer went for his assimilator and then his gateway after the pylon without any probes on the map, so I feel like what we're seeing out of Protoss is also kind of interesting as well. And a second gas from ByuN.
So there's a good chance that everything is going to be proxied, or he will still get the factory and starport at home, but this could be anything. This could be a 1 base all-in with tanks and liberators. It could also be cloaked banshees eventually. But first and most importantly is that very first Reaper for ByuN. It's safe to say, Nate, that this Reaper needs to get at least 2, but preferably 3 or 4 kills.
The probe is going to go across the map now. And the Nexus is on the way for Deer, but yep, there we go. The Reaper is coming in. So whether he chooses to build his factory out on the map, like you said, remains to be seen. SCV is going to immediately drop a bunker at the front of Deer's base. There's no pylon here. There's no probes here to see this. So the odds of this finishing get better and better as time goes by. And as that gas builds up, it looks like ByuN is going to start that factory back home.
And this probe could actually be annoying. Could start working on this SCV, which will force ByuN to pull another SCV or even 2 more. Well, he's already there, Nate. He's on the money. This is not his first rodeo. He's been in this position before. Deer should kind of know already what is happening now. So the probe micro, once again, is going to be incredibly important. He should not lose more than 2 workers. If he ends up losing more than 2, it's going to get quite painful. 1 probe falls very low on HP so far, but good micro by Deer. Very good so far, Nate.
He's not lost too much. Okay, one of the probes does get knocked down. There's one with very little health at the north side of that mineral line as the bunker is complete. Marines are being rallied towards it to try and prevent this natural expansion from being set up, and also giving a place for this Reaper to retreat to. Gets the second probe on the way in from scouting. And the Nexus is done. Mothership core is out, but there's no pylon there to overcharge just yet.
Now we're kind of expecting, obviously, a robotics facility, because Deer has to worry about Wither Mines, he has to worry about Cloak Banshees eventually, so robotics facility as a follow-up is great. Do you think it's going to be Cyclones over here by ByuN at first?
I mean, he's building the starport at home. I mean, both Cyclone and Tank are really good.
Wow.
Mag Field Accelerator Cyclones. Okay, well, something I can actually talk about here. The factory tech with this build is extremely powerful, since Cyclones with this upgrade, they're going to kill a Stalker in like 4 shots once they're locked on. The Barracks is going to provide high ground vision, but also allow the Cyclone to use its full 14 range once it locks onto a unit, making it extremely difficult for a Protoss player to dance around and try to poke this bunker. I mean, with the setup that he's going for and a Liberator follow-up, securing this natural should be impossible.
I feel that Barracks floating there kind of gives away to Deer right now that he indeed has to start worrying about a Cyclone, right? Because why else would you put the Barracks there? Obviously, you want to use it for vision. There's only a single pylon at the low ground right now. Photon Overcharge will take care of this bunker. It's incredibly important for Deer that he gets the Stalker count up. I think dealing with Cyclones is alright if you have like 4 or 5 Stalkers. You know, you pull the one Stalker back. His micro is going to be very important. The Zealot will be the first target for ByuN. He picks it up very easily. But I actually think so far it's going pretty okay for Deer. He needs to save the Mothership core though, and I think he will save it.
Yeah, the Magfield Accelerator upgrade is not yet done for the Cyclone, so it lacks about half of the damage it could have against these armored forces. And also very important to note, both against the Liberator and the Cyclone, is the robotics facility that he's getting. Something like a War Prism can really help to move in and out of the lock-on range, but also get those Stalkers underneath the Liberators without losing them.
Yep, we've got 5 Stalkers now. That should be good enough. There's still one SCV here that's going to try to repair these Cyclones, but without the Barracks, it becomes a lot more difficult. For ByuN, one of the Cyclones is incredibly low in HP.
You need the vision. You need the vision from that Barracks to help finish off these units. Of course, as you can see, the damage is extremely high, but without that, it's also going to make any other follow-up that he does a bit tricky, too. The Liberator's going to give the vision. He gets 2 of the Stalkers, almost.
That's one Cyclone, though. That could have been a lot worse for Deer. For a split second, I thought he was going to lose 2 Stalkers and not get anything for it. Worker count 28 against 27, but obviously ByuN is still on 1 base, so this is not that bad for Deer. But the micro, once again, is going to be incredibly important. He's going to use the War Prism.
This is how you deal with early Cyclones. The Prism control to pick up the unit that gets locked onto, move it out. Of course, you can use it to get around the Freedom Zones and attack those Liberators. So Deer has a lot of utility from this force. One thing that we do not have with this setup, because you go for this, is anything like Marines or Marauders. So you have to play with these positional, squishy units as the Cyclones to kind of be your main buffer. You need to lock on. He gets the Prism. Great grab. As you can see, things die really fast when Cyclones
shuts down that aggression immediately. That could have been very complicated, because obviously if the Cyclones can't lock on anything and this Liberator is just sitting there, that could have been a difficult hold, but ByuN is like, nope, let me target that Prism, gets it immediately, and he's out of the woods for now.
Well, the other great thing, of course, that this opens up is the Liberators can still go out and harass now that he doesn't have to worry as much. Cyclones maintain a lot of this utility, but since he's trying to just get his barracks set up, keep him at home for now. But Cyclones can do a lot of damage. You can move them out on the map. They can pick off all sorts of things. They destroy pylons. 3 lock-ons is enough to kill a Nexus. So you have to be very cautious as a Protoss with these sharking around. Here comes the Liberator towards the natural. The Stalkers are barely going to miss it.
Yeah, gets a little bit unlucky. Was hoping to intercept it, but it was actually already sitting there. He's going to bring it back. ByuN is sending his Liberator via the right side, but there is units nearby. Doesn't really end up losing a whole lot. Not even that much mining time.
Yeah, he's going to have to eat a shot or 2 from this Liberator to be able to pick it off. Losing a Stalker, 2 Stalkers. Liberators are pretty annoying to deal with, Cam.
I felt he could have only lost 1 there if he would have sent the Stalkers in a little further, because he had the numbers to deal with it. 3 Cyclones are going to try to trade on the other side of the map. Pick up a probe.
You're going to have a hard time taking this 3rd base with the Cyclones here before Blink is done, so you have to be very careful, but you can just get that lock on. The Cyclone can acquire a lock on at 7 range, so if you micro it perfectly, you can continue to harass and poke without losing too much.
Deer did a very good job there, though, sending that 1 Stalker back, then letting the Immortal, you know, at least get a shot off, and then sending the Immortal back as well. So far, I think Deer is playing a lot better this game than he was in the previous map.
And the Liberator is going to show up into the main base, so what he wants to do, if you can try to pull some of these Stalkers back and not die to an overcharge, there is the possibility of being able to get those Cyclones up towards the 3rd base, which is very important here.
Good pylon spread, but still, ByuN finds something. Doesn't get a single worker yet,
I'd love to see ByuN focus down this. There we go, right onto the Nexus with that lock on. That damage output is extremely high. The Stalkers need to run back to defend this very quickly. Trading out the Stalkers at a choke point, gets the cancel on the third. Those Cyclones do insane damage. Just for reference, over the course of their lock-on, each Cyclone does 800 damage to buildings.
He's going for Colossus, Nate. Very fast Colossus over here against these 3 Cyclones. It would be very nice to pick them off before the Colossus is out, because Colossus die faster than any other unit in the game against Cyclones.
There's something really weird in StarCraft 2 where Cyclones use both their anti-air and anti-ground lock-on against Colossi. They do double damage, so theoretically 1,600.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of damage. Colossi are actually, they're pretty weak against Cyclones.
And look at ByuN, he's also producing 2 Marauders at a time this time and 2 Marines. He's gonna march across the map. Current army supply is 53. Would be awesome for there to get a snipe on a medevac, but ByuN is aware of it. He's gonna stim forward. He's gonna push these Stalkers back for now. And I actually think this is going to be a rather difficult hold for there, because he doesn't have any pylons anywhere near the top of this rep, Nate.
Yep, all he has is his Colossus was just finished and the Immortal to anchor it, but we have to keep in mind the Colossus does not have range, so it has to get very close to this force to be able to attack it. And is he just going to push right through? The Siege Tank's getting some big shots off on those Stalkers.
Yeah, Deer needs a few more units. He's going to be forced to cancel this Nexus one more time, but that's obviously better than losing everything. ByuN is not satisfied yet. He's going in deeper.
Yep, and now the tanks can also pick off the pylons that are going to be used for the overcharge. 2 more pylons being added by that Nexus. Second Colossus is about to pop. Thermal Lance is almost ready. These are 2 crucial things here for Deer to try and hold this.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be very hard for ByuN to get away from this, because the Stalker count is incredibly high, but with 3 tanks, I think but Deer is going to go for it.
Yep, everything is coming right on top. The Stalkers blink down. 3 Siege Tanks still standing strong. Pick off one of the Colossus. First tank gets killed. Second Siege Tank is dead. There's a single Viking here, but that Colossus, those Marauders click on it, Kev. It's going to die so fast. Deer holds this attack. I really thought there was a chance to get the Colossus there, but great control to not lose everything. However, ByuN is going to get his third up still much faster than Deer, so is he just going to go for a big push?
And don't forget that he's also already having +1 armor is on the way, while there is no forge at all on the other side of the map for Deer.
Yeah, this is something that can definitely get very awkward as those Marines and Marauders attack so fast. It helps tremendously. Slowing this expansion down is a big deal for Deer. Normally, the Protoss is going to get that third base before Terran, and it's also kind of awkward to see how Deer has extended himself by taking that north base as his third, and maybe it looks like he actually has a probe at the normal third base too. I'm not really sure what he's planning. He's going to go for a super crazy double expand.
Double expanding is incredibly hard to get away with on Frozen Temple, because
it's such a small map.
Yeah, I know, it's the smallest map pretty much out there. The moment that ByuN picks up on that, he's like, all right, cool, let me get a few more units, then I'm going to run across the map and go for it. These Stalkers could actually be in very dangerous waters over here, as they will get sandwiched by a couple of these bioforces.
Oh yeah, these 4 Marauders are more than enough to wreck this force. So he's going to run towards the rocks and probably try to blink across the other side and hide.
And then blink again in the logo. I think at least 2 Stalkers should fall here.
These aren't the campaign Stalkers that have 3 charges of blink. He's going to lose a few of these bad boys on the way out, and a nice grab there for ByuN.
Oh, look at the supply suddenly. I mean, ByuN up almost 30 supply, 15 army supply. He's up 12 workers. That's insane. If anything, normally this is the other way around. Protoss is the one that's supposed to be up 12 workers. Look at the income advantage that ByuN currently has.
Mules,
900 minerals a minute.
I love those meals, Cap.
And he's also down in upgrades. I'm not exactly sure how Deer is going to turn this one around. A couple of great blinks, great pickups could be a start, but this is going to be very difficult, Nate.
Now, this is one of those scenarios where the production of Vikings to this degree is very important, as these Adepts do go into the third base mineral line. Marines and Marauders already in position to stop this, but with the number of Colossi being built, we actually can see the usefulness of the Vikings come in here. He stims forward with the Marauders. 1 Colossus down, 2 Colossi, and still pushing forward. The Vikings will be able to get the last one, and the Marines and Marauders can kill these Adepts and Stalkers with no trouble at all. ByuN crippling the supply. GG, a 2-0 victory.
Stimming forward there in the end, just completely ignoring the Adepts, not wasting any potential DPS of these Marauders, and just going for these Colossus. We mentioned it before the games. Colossus can indeed be incredibly good, but they can also fall very quickly, and that's what we saw over here. Very cool build by ByuN in game number 2. Love the opening with the Proxy Reaper. Even when it didn't do that much, it set up for the Cyclones and it set up for the Liberators. And I think it's safe to say that the Liberators is really where things started going wrong for Deer. Losing 2-3 Stalkers for every Liberator you clean up, it's too much, Nate.
Yeah, delaying the expansion as well, because he opened up the door to go for that third base, which was canceled twice. It's just a really, really great game sense by ByuN, the way that he played. We are going to hear from him after a short break. Thank you guys. You're watching the World Championship Series.
Heroes of the Storm. Prepare for Heroes Brawl, the new game mode that breaks all the rules. Rated T13.
We just saw ByuN take down 2-0 in the elimination match for Group C. So first of all, ByuN, you said that you are a player that does get nervous a lot. How does it feel to, in the elimination match, be able to move on? How relieving is that?
일단 변윤우 선수가 긴장을 좀 한다고 했는데 이렇게 최종 경기까지 와가지고 그래도 이제 진출을 하셨는데 그 느낌을 좀 얘기해 주세요.
일단 오늘 되게 그러니까 제가 항상 풀세트 이렇게 매치 포인트만 되면 긴장을 되게 많이 해가지고 어제도 1대0 상황에서 이렇게 너무 긴장해가지고 이렇게 혼자서 말려가지고 오늘도 그렇지 않을까 생각했는데 제가 어제 지고 나서 쇼타임 선수한테 지고 나서 부끄러움을 무릅쓰고 제가 자존심도 굽혀가면서 제가 쇼타임한테 연습 신청을 했어요. 연습 부탁을. 그래서 쇼타임은 흔쾌히 연습을 도와주더라고요. 그것 때문에 제가 이긴 것 같아요. 그리고 어제 팬분들이 제가 졌는데도 불구하고 응원 메시지를 많이 보내주셔가지고 어제 진짜 멘탈이 완전 와르르 그냥 무너졌거든요. 근데 그 메시지 보고 힘내서 쇼타임한테 연습하자고 해서 이렇게 좋은 결과가 나온 것 같아요.
So he says, first of all, for some reason, whenever it becomes match point, I get so nervous. That happened today. That happened yesterday when I was down 1-0 over Showtime. So luckily, it worked out today. But yesterday, when I was down 1-0 and eventually lost to Showtime, honestly, my mental game fell apart. I was really, really devastated. But in that moment, a lot of my fans actually messaged me a lot of support, and I was so, so thankful to those guys. So thank you so much. And another thing I want to add is actually yesterday, after my fans messaged me, I went to Showtime and I laid down my pride. And despite having just lost to him 2-0, I asked him for some practice help and he actually said okay. So I was able to play with him a lot and I learned a lot from practicing with him. And I think that's a big reason why I was able to win today against Deer. So thanks to Showtime. And now, ByuN, when it comes to this 2-0 loss that you just mentioned against Showtime yesterday, you just said that it was devastating. But talk to us a little bit more specifically about what exactly was going through your head. 이제 방금 멘탈이 완전 떨어졌다고 했잖아요. 그 쇼타임한테 졌을 때. 그래서 좀 더 얘기해 주세요.
근데 제가 지고 나서 제가 오늘 컨디션이 안 좋은가 보다 생각을 했어요. 근데 그래서 연습을 한번 해봤거든요. 근데 제가 컨디션이 안 좋은 게 아니라 그냥 쇼타임이 잘하는 거였어요. 오늘도 아침에 했는데 역시 잘하더라고요.
So he says, after the loss against Showtime yesterday, I thought to myself, okay, maybe I'm just not playing great. Maybe it's my play style. I just didn't play to my best. But after, when Showtime agreed to practice with me and I played with him again, I realized, okay, it's not me. Showtime's just really damn good. And today, in fact, I came again this morning and practiced with him. And again, I felt it. Showtime is a really, really good player. So I just felt that very strongly, that Showtime is a very, very outstanding player. And just speaking of Showtime, there are other foreign players that have showed showed impressive results at the WCS Global Finals. So can you speak to that a little bit and whether that's surprising you at all? 이제 쇼타임 떠나서도 다른 해외 선수들이 이제 몇 명 잘하고 있잖아요. 그래서 그거에 대해서 좀 놀라운지.
근데 저는 온라인 해외 대회도 많이 나가다 보니까 저는 이렇게 해외 선수가 이렇게 그러니까 이 정도 할 거라는 건 예상은 했어요. 근데 한 2명 정도 올라올 줄 알았는데 3명까지 올라올 줄은 몰랐어요.
So he says, I actually do play in a lot of online tournaments, so I actually knew that the foreign players did play this well. And honestly, I actually thought that 2 players would be moving on, but I was quite surprised to see that it would actually be 3. So they've impressed me in that regard. And last but not least, you are a GSL champion. You've played in front of a massive Korean crowd, but next week you'll have a chance to play in front of a huge foreign crowd. So speak to that a little bit. 이제 GS 우승자로서 이제 한국 팬들 앞에서는 이제 이렇게 우승도까지도 하셨는데 이제 다음 주에서는 엄청 큰 해외 팬들 앞에서 경기하게 돼요. 그래서 그 기회에 대해서 얘기해 주세요.
근데 해외 팬들은 제 경기가 많이 익숙하실 거예요. 왜냐하면 제가 스트림을 많이 하기 때문에 한 번 하면 7, 80게임 정도 하거든요. 그래서 많이 익숙하실 텐데 제가 여기 지금 미국에 있으면서도 한국 팬분들의 도움을 되게 많이 받았거든요. 그래서 이번 기회에 경기 되게 멋지게 잘해가지고 해외 팬도 많이 만들어서 제가 국내에 있을 때도 좀 많은 도움을 받았으면 좋겠어요.
So he says, actually, I think the foreign fans should be pretty used to my games. I do stream a lot, and when I stream, I actually try to play and get in as many games as I can. So it shouldn't be completely foreign to them. But even when I was here, I've been practicing a lot with some Korean players and things like that. So I hope that as I can continue to get their help and show a great performance. So congratulations again, ByuN. We do move on to the quarterfinals, and with that, he will be our 7th player that secures his place in the top 8.
Showtime is number 1 in Group C. ByuN is in number 2 position. And we'll move forward to play at BlizzCon next weekend. Back on the couch, we have Todd Artosis and in control. First of all, I think we should perhaps touch on a little bit of his interview there before we look at the series.
Yeah, like the fact that he says that he laid down his pride and asked the guy who smashed him to practice with him, and he thanks him for helping him see what he did wrong. And that's a foreigner. That's Showtime. Like, even if Apollo were to write scripts for everyone, we couldn't come up with something this good.
And he definitely doesn't.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't do that.
ByuN just won, but it feels like Showtime can have won as well, in a way, too, with all the praise that he's getting. So it really goes to show that, I guess, Showtime's pretty darn good, and we maybe shouldn't have sold him as like an underdog in a way when he played against ByuN, but ByuN, like, really delivered this series.
Yeah.
We were all theorizing about, are we going to see Colossus and all that? And no, it was a couple Immortals dying to 40 Marines in game number 1. And then in game number 2, just, again, ByuN with the relentless aggression and just super solid all around.
Yeah, this felt like a return to real life. That first series was, or the first game, excuse me, was pretty embarrassing if you're Deer. I don't think he necessarily made tremendous mistakes. He just didn't get a good read on what he was facing and then did not particularly react very well. Having more Stalkers there than Adepts against an almost purely Marine composition, of course, it's going to be rough. But I think when we talked about ByuN initially, this is kind of more what we expected. Game number 2, Todd talks about relentless aggression. That was certainly there just from the very beginning, starting with that bunker, and then progressing with just not making mistakes. Like his specialty is aggression and micro and staying in your face, and he just never left Deer's side of the map, and it just never looked like he was in danger of losing at all.
And it was cool to see something different as well, with a couple Cyclones and stuff.
Different? Oh, you don't play the Korean ladder. I do have to say, Deer was playing like really well, especially in the second game. I thought like he only lost 2 probes to Proxy Reaper, which like I mean you're gonna see most Protosses lose 4 to 6, and then like he breaks through the bunker without too much damage. Even some of these pushes that ByuN brought, it's not like Deer was playing poorly. He was holding everything. He was living a lot longer. Us all over on the couch were like, oh god, is he just dead here? And it's like, nope, he holds yet again. Wow, that's pretty impressive. But ByuN definitely looked a lot better today, I guess thanks to Showtime. And
you know what's kind of funny too?
Definitely still a competitor for the tournament.
I wonder, we were making all this big news about like ByuN, how is he going to react to Colossus? I don't know, but I would almost speculate after watching these games, it was actually kind of Deer that misreacted to the Colossus. He was like, oh, I'm going to make Colossus, and that's going to throw you off. But it's not necessarily that Showtime went Colossus, it's kind of when he did. It's like after 3 bases, he sprinkled in 2 or 3. We saw Deer in this game in particular just trying to force them out off of like 2 bases. Yes, he set up a 3rd, but it kept getting canceled, so he was just kind of like, I'm going to still make Colossus anyways, and of course at that time, maybe you make that hard choice, but we just, it's in our brains that when Colossus come out, the Terran like has to pull back and get Vikings because all of HOTS, that was the law. You did not fight a Colossus. But now, with just that little bit of damage, well, a little bit, it's 20% damage reduction, they are not the same unit. They're a very good support unit, exactly how Showtime used them. And they do good with mind games where it's like maybe you have to break away from the composition you're used to deal with them. So that kind of stuff is cool about them, but they are not carry units anymore. You don't get out 1 or 2 and win.
Everybody got so much better against Colossus as well. Like I remember Wings of Liberty, like whenever somebody would make Colossus, like, there was almost like this rule that Terran, they would engage, and they would certainly not kite back. They would just stand there, and either they won the fight or they didn't. Usually they didn't, because Colossus just killed everything, but nowadays people know how to pick up units, leave, split, do all that, so Colossus are much harder to pull off as Protoss, which makes the victory from Showtime even more impressive from yesterday.
Looking at ByuN, back to tournament winning status level now?
What's really nice for him is he's going to have a few days off now as we head into BlizzCon, and this is what he's going to be left with, because it was a little bit of a crisis moment where he got swatted pretty hard. Although I do like Todd's comments earlier where he said, like, look, guys, 2-0 is a big deal, but in-game, it's not like ByuN was like just getting destroyed. He actually had a chance to win in both games. But yeah, he's going to go to sleep and be like, okay, I'm in the top 8. That's where I expected to be. I wanted to be, you know, #1. It didn't happen, but whatever. I'm up there. And with his play looking really good, he didn't even shake in this match, because even that would be a little bit tough for ByuN, I think.
Yep.
Because he was such a favorite coming into this. If he struggled against Deer and like just barely won, maybe that has a little bit of frayed nerve to it, but he's okay. He's going to feel good.
By the way, racial distribution in top 8. We've got 2 Terrans, 2 Zergs, and I think 4 Protoss. So perfect balance here. I mean, from Protoss players. So shout out to David Kim, doing a fantastic job.
Perfect balance, Todd. If you're just tuning in now, you can have a quick look at the results and the one game that we do have coming up. It is going to be a Zerg vs Zerg. It's going to be the 2 Polish players remaining to find out who will take second place in Group D. It's been a brilliant day so far, but it's not over yet. And do remember, at the end of the day, we will be doing the live bracket draw to see who will play who when we move over to Anaheim to play at BlizzCon next weekend. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, it's Poland versus Poland.